What is going on, Paribus Nation? Welcome to Dapp Central. My name is Fareed, and as a part of today's video, I've got two bits of news that I want to share with you guys surrounding Paribus. The first is going to be surrounding a recent announcement that the Paribus team is aiming to open source all of their smart contracts. The second is going to be surrounding the KuCoin geofencing announcement, which was made earlier this month. Now, before we jump into all of that, I just want to briefly touch on what Paribus is. If it's your first time hearing about Paribus, they're going to be a DeFi protocol focusing on lending and borrowing of synthetic assets and NFTs. They just released on the Arbitrum mainnet over the course of the last month, and they're currently working to migrate over as a Cardano native project. In closing, you can currently purchase the Paribus token on EVM networks, which include Ethereum using Uniswap or PancakeSwap, and you can also pick up the PBX token on Cardano using a platform like the Wing Riders DEX. Now, if you guys want to find out more about Paribus or how to purchase the PBX token on Wing Riders, I've got a fully dedicated playlist here focusing on this project. Now, jumping into the first topic here, what I want to touch on is going to be the fact that Paribus is going to be open sourcing their code. Now, what we're going to do is touch on other projects that have also recently decided to open source their code, which include Meld, Indigo, and a few more projects within the Cardano ecosystem. I also want to take a brief moment here to touch on some of the benefits of using open source code. Now, if you guys are not already following Paribus on Medium, I highly recommend that you guys go ahead and do so. And so without taking up too much more time, let's break down this particular article, and then we're going to jump into talking more about exchanges. So it reads here, after discovering that we were victims of an exploit, we've decided to share our plans to open source our code and make it accessible to external developers. Now, the main highlight here is going to be surrounding the open sourcing of their code, not necessarily the exploit, but I do want to give a little bit of background just to make sure that you guys have some context here. After Paribus launched, there was a minor reentrancy attack, which basically occurred on the protocol. Now, if you're not familiar with what a reentrancy attack is, this is basically when you have a smart contract that gets acted upon, and before that smart contract is done executing, it is basically called again by a user. And so, for example, you may have a call to add liquidity to a protocol that has, to go through a certain amount of steps in order to complete. Now, before it's actually done with that contract and all the steps that are included within that contract, it is then called again. Similarly, people can take advantage of a protocol or of a platform by executing a reentrancy attack on withdrawal contracts. Now it continues to read here, our aim in doing so, which again is in reference to them externalizing their source code, are simple. Through leveraging a wider pool of minds, we will be better positioned to avoid potential faults and bugs that may arise in the future. Now, if you're not familiar with what open sourcing is, this is basically where you share all of your source code or all of your smart contract information and repository information with the general public. So it states here, open sourcing code has become increasingly popular in recent years, with many companies and organizations embracing these principles as a way to enhance innovation, reduce costs, and improve transparency. It involves allowing the public to access and contribute to software code development. Now, what I just mentioned there earlier is that we saw Meld as well as Indigo, which are going to be DeFi lending borrowing projects built on Cardano, also open source their code. Now, I believe the Indigo team had a commercial license in place, which basically makes sure that nobody can leverage their open source code for commercial purposes within the first 2 years. Now, I believe Meld has also done something very similar, and I'm interested in wondering or in figuring out if the Paribus team is also or is planning to do something like that as well. Now, a few benefits when it comes to open sourcing. Number one is the fact that you can now leverage the power of the growing community in order to actually make sure that the protocol is safe and secure. So, around the clock, because the code is publicly available, people are able to poke around and actually see what they can find. And with bug bounty programs, like we've seen with the Paribus protocol, this incentivizes the community to take a look, and if they find anything, to report that to the Paribus team. That way they can make sure to go ahead and patch it and resolve it if need be. The second bit of benefit here is going to be surrounding transparency. So as a platform begins to open source their code, everything surrounding that entire platform is available for anybody to see. So if there's any question that you may have about Paribus and how their smart contracts work, given the fact that they're going to be making them open source, you'll be able to verify them yourself. If the team has anything malicious that they plan on doing, given the fact that it's all in the code, that will be completely visible to the public. And so those are the two main benefits here when it comes to open sourcing. Again, leveraging the community to double check and verify everything that's been released. And then number two, in terms of transparency, making sure that everything is clear to the general public. Now, if we scroll down just a little bit below, there's going to be a brief piece here surrounding the fact that the Wing Riders DEX actually managed to help another DEX, which is the MinSwap DEX, avoid a potential exploit given the fact that they had open sourced their code. So just over a year ago, MinSwap open sourced their code, and the team at Wing Riders managed to help them avoid a potential exploit. We aim to reduce the risk of future exploits by following the same path. Now, the Wing Riders team didn't have to do this. Again, this was only done because they were obviously working within the same ecosystem, and the MinSwap team had just open sourced their code. Imagine if the MinSwap team would have said, hey, instead of open sourcing our code, we're going to choose to keep that for ourselves. Well, once they would have launched that, a potential hacker could have taken advantage of that code, but instead, because it made it open source, the Wing Riders DEX was able to take a look. They double checked it and said, hey, you may want to take a look at this here. This might be a function or a piece of the smart contract that can actually be exploited. And so the Paribus team is looking to do the same exact thing. Now we are getting close to the bottom of this article here. And so in closing here, similarly, open source code allows for a wider range of developers to contribute to securing the protocol, often leading to better and more creative solutions. By making our code openly available, we'll encourage collaboration and peer review. This process also helps identify and fix bugs and vulnerabilities faster and helps make the platform more secure. Now, if you guys would like to read that entire article, I will leave the link to it down in the description below. The next item I want to touch on is going to be an article here surrounding navigating the exchange landscape. If you're not aware, around the early beginning of April, the Paribus team as well as the KuCoin team actually sent out emails stating that US customers would be geofenced from purchasing or selling the PBX token on their exchange. Now, the KuCoin exchange is going to be one of the larger exchanges allowing trading of the PBX token. Keep in mind that you can still purchase and trade PBX, not only on Cardano's Wing Riders DEX, but on other DEXs on EVM chains, which include Uniswap. So the token is available other places, but keep in mind that the liquidity may not be as deep and the accessibility to the general public may not be as easy. And so in that breath, we saw that the KuCoin platform had geofenced US users from actually using the platform. And so this particular article here basically breaks down some of the benefits as well as some of the drawbacks of current exchanges. So we're going to kick off things here by reading the very top, and then I've got a few sections that I want to touch on, and then we're going to close out today's Paribus update. So despite the promise of decentralized exchanges, most transactions occur on centralized exchanges such as Binance, Coinbase, and KuCoin. Now, if you guys have been here in the crypto space, you would know that everything about the space is all about decentralization. Again, we're looking to get away from centralized entities that have a majority stake or a majority control of these different platforms. And so using a decentralized exchange like Wing Riders or Uniswap or even PancakeSwap puts the power back in the hands of the user. Whereas a centralized exchange, you have to basically give them custody and ownership of your assets, right? So if, for example, you have all your assets on Coinbase and Coinbase goes under or gets liquidated, right, in terms of the entire company, they technically would own your assets. Whereas on a decentralized exchange or a decentralized network, because you have self-custody of your keys, you're always in control of your crypto. And so this is basically highlighting that while we're looking to transition into a more decentralized economy, right, within crypto, a lot of the current activity is taking place on centralized exchanges. From the perspective of projects, exchanges play a crucial part in helping their community support and raise the profile of their protocol. However, listing on exchanges can be complicated and they can come at a cost, so each new agreement must be carefully planned and timed. Touching on the very first part there, exchanges are key, right? Again, it allows for a lot more accessibility to a particular token to be made. Imagine, Paribus getting listed on KuCoin. Well, KuCoin is a huge platform with multiple users, or millions of users, I should say. But imagine them also getting listed on Binance or, for example, Coinbase. These platforms have millions of users, and this basically puts the Paribus token directly at the front of those users. There's a lot of users that don't want to have to actually self-custody their own assets, and they would much rather go to a platform like Coinbase or Binance. And so there are benefits when it comes to using a centralized exchange or getting listed on a centralized exchange. But keep in mind that these platforms that list or that are listed on centralized exchanges have to pay huge amounts of fees and provide tons of liquidity in order to be market makers on these platforms. And so, for example, if Paribus would look to get listed on Coinbase or Binance, right, not only would they have to pay a huge listing fee, they would also have to provide the Paribus token to actually be traded or to facilitate trading on these exchanges. And so in my recent interview here, which I'll leave linked down below, which I had with Dennis, he did mention that they are working right now to get additional listings. However, it's not their main priority given the two reasons that I just mentioned there. Number one, the huge listing fees, and then number two, the huge amount of liquidity that they'd have to provide in order to be market makers. So Dennis actually states here, securing a new exchange listing is almost always a benefit for the project as it allows for the token to be more accessible, which I just mentioned. There are costs associated, which can also hinder the runway for the project. So the last thing that we want the Paribus team to do is take away from liquidity or funding that would be going towards development of the protocol and put that towards the exchange. And so in closing of Dennis's statement, it reads, additionally, providing liquidity can be costly, and following the stipulations of particular exchanges can come at the cost of changing certain business structures. So we don't want to actually have the team have a listing at the expense of the productivity or the delivering of the actual protocol. As the platform grows naturally and organically, people will find out about Paribus if their value proposition is valuable enough. The exchanges won't make or break the protocol. It's actually going to be what the team is able to deliver that will do so. Now, that is my personal opinion, but let me know what you guys think down below. Now, scrolling down just a little bit further, there's one last section that I want to touch on here. And so Dennis states, we want to thank our community for their patience with the KuCoin geofence issue. We are in communication with KuCoin and GSR in order to resolve this problem. Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do now in order to force their hands. Now, to end this off here on a positive note, I do want to state that I've been keeping a close eye here within the Paribus Telegram. If you guys are not already in the Telegram, I recommend you guys go ahead and jump in there, as the team provides daily updates surrounding everything going on with their protocol. Not only the development and the activity when it comes to their bi-weekly Twitter spaces, but they also keep us updated with things like the KuCoin geofencing issue. And so as a part of my latest update or latest catch up within their Telegram, I did see some comments stating that the geofencing issue does appear to be resolved for certain US buyers. So if I show you guys my screen here one last time, I am currently using KuCoin within the US region, and it does appear that right now I can go ahead and actually purchase and sell the PBX token if I want to. Now, I don't have a lot of liquidity in my account right now, given the fact that I did withdraw my funds once the initial announcement surrounding the geofencing was made. So I'll be moving back over some liquidity over the course of the next week or so, and I'll provide you guys with a definitive answer as to whether or not it's been resolved on my personal end over the course of the next week. That said, as the official announcement rolls out from KuCoin, I'll make sure to keep you guys updated, and I'll provide you guys more news here in my next update video. I think that's going to do it here again for Paribus, in which we've talked about them open sourcing their code here very soon, as well as an update here surrounding centralized exchanges and the KuCoin geofencing announcement. If you guys found today's update here to be helpful, I would really appreciate it if you guys could tap that like button. If it's your first time stopping by and you want more content just like this, consider subscribing. And if you have any questions for me about Paribus or anybody building on Cardano, then make sure to leave a comment down below. That said, and as always, I will see you guys in the next video.